Skull Rock Podcast is brought to you by the generosity of the following companies. The Old Mill Press, publishing beautifully crafted books that illuminate our world. To learn more, visit theoldmillpress.com. And by listeners like you.
Skull Rock Podcast is thrilled to announce that we are now on Patreon. Dive deeper into the world of animation, films, and behind-the-scenes stories with your hosts Aljon Go and Dave Bossert. Not only will you be helping to keep the magic alive, but will be part of our special community. We want to thank our Skull Rock crew members, Steve Minch and Chris Banas, for their support. If you would like to join our Skull Rock crew, please visit our Patreon link in our show notes or visit patreon.com/Skull Rock Podcast. Thank you for listening and for your continued support of everything we do.
Hey there, this is Tammy Tuckey from the Tammy Tuckey Podcast, and you are listening to the Skull Rock Podcast.
Aye, mateys, remember this as the day you sailed with the Skull Rock Podcast. Proceed at your own risk and mark well me words, mateys. Dead men tell no tale.
Welcome to Skull Rock Podcast, the show about all things Disney and pop culture. Every week we take you behind the scenes of some of your favorite Disney films, theme park attractions, performances, books, music, as well as what's streaming, what's playing in theaters, and what's going on in this universe of entertainment. I'm Aljon Go, musician and longtime Disney, Marvel, Star Wars, pop culture fan, and you can email me, Aljon, A-L-J-O-N, at skullrockpodcast.com.
And I'm Dave Bossert, artist, filmmaker, Disney historian, and author. Welcome to the Skull Rock Podcast. I'm well rested this week.
Yay!
If you love Disney and pop culture, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. You can also like and follow us on Facebook, X, Blue Sky, Instagram, LinkedIn, and on the Skull Rock YouTube channel. You can also email me at dave@skullrockpodcast.com. Well, Aljon, I hope you've had a great Memorial Day weekend.
Yes, absolutely. It's a great time not only to just spend some time with the family, to do some catch up on all things housework, but also to remember everyone that has paid the ultimate price in our armed forces. So thank you for your sacrifice, and the families that have to live with that sacrifice and understand, everything that they've sacrificed. So thank you for that.
Absolutely, Aljon. And, this year marks the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II.
Wow. Man.
Yeah, which is unbelievable. 80 years ago. It's also this year marks the 70th anniversary of the opening of Disneyland. So you imagine Disneyland opened 10 years after World War II ended?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's great and to see video of some of the greatest generation ever just kind of still going out there and going to the memorials and still being involved and telling their stories. I've been able to see some of these documentaries on YouTube about some of their harrowing stories. It's just wonderful that we're able to kind of go back and listen to some of these great stories.
And I'm really glad that there are people out there who have documented, have done these oral histories at museums and foundations and, just people collecting that history. It really is something else. We have a great show today. Once again, we've got part 2 of our interview with Jim Hillin, visual effects supervisor, artist, animator. So looking forward to that. Jim's really terrific. I hope people enjoyed part 1 last week. We've got a lot going on here, so we should move on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, once again, I encourage everybody to send us those emails. We get these comments all the time. And last week we had a full mailbag. Dave, you've got one? I have one. Oh, you've got one?
Awesome. Let's go into it. I do have a note.
Let's launch into it.
Skull Rock Podcast answers your email.
All right, Dave, what's in the mailbag this week?
So I got a note on social media from John. I don't know where John is from, but he said, "Hey Dave, could you ask Roger Sajan sometime what scenes he animated on Heavy Metal?" Well, I'll tell you what, John, I'm going to send Roger a note and ask him that question, and hopefully next week we'll have an answer for you. So there you go. So, again, listeners, if you want more information from our guests and you didn't hear them talk about something, send us a note. We'll reach back out to them and ask them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. And we've had a bunch of people here that have worked on Heavy Metal that we've introduced, and it's always great because actually having this, I was at a wedding, Dave, the other day, one of my friends' weddings, and we were talking about Aljon, your podcast is great, and I really like it when you talk about the movie Heavy Metal. It was just one of the great movies, and this woman talking to me, she's a little bit younger, so she's a millennial. She's not a Gen Xer like me, and it's amazing how other generations pick up on some of these classic, I would call Heavy Metal classic by now, but classic,
absolutely, without question.
Because I remember, growing up going, man, this is just, it's not it hooks you in because it's animated, but then you realize, man, this is an adult, it's an adult film. I mean, not it's definitely geared toward adults, right?
Yeah.
And it's got a great style to it. And I love that fantasy aspect of that film. So I can't wait to talk more about Heavy Metal. I mean, I feel like we could probably stitch together a really cool, behind the scenes of Heavy Metal just from the guests that we've had in the past,
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
So you know what? We'll get an answer for you, John, and get back to you.
Absolutely. And once again, feel free to email us. We'd love to hear from you, Dave or Aljon at skullrockpodcast.com. All right, Dave. So now we've been through the email bag and it's time for our picks of the week. You've been busy at the theater, haven't you?
I have been busy. I've been catching up because I traveled for a week and I didn't really see much, but I did go and see Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. This is the 8th edition to the franchise. And I have to tell you, Aljon, and I say this without hesitation, Tom Cruise is the greatest action star in motion picture history.
Wow, that's big.
I'm really going to say that. Some people might argue, but there is no way that you can compare Tom Cruise to any other action star out there because of the stunts he has done in his movies. And it's not just the Mission Impossible films. It's really all of the films he's been in.
Well, it's
phenomenal.
Well, I just called this up as you mentioned that of the highest grossing action movies of all time. 5. So I would say, what is it? 3 of them are Top Gun, Mission Impossible, Fallout, and Mission Impossible. There was another mission. There was several of them Mission Impossible films. And those are the top grossing films of action films of all time. The other top ones would happen to be James Bond films like Spectre and Skyfall.
Yeah.
But
and by the way, speaking of Bond, next to James Bond, this to me is one of the greatest action franchises.
It certainly is. I mean, that's paid off. And believe it or not, Dave, Fast and Furious is also in that top echelon.
Yeah, I'm sure. But, to me, it's a different type of movie.
It is.
It's a different genre altogether. But this movie, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, is an incredible film. It is a fantastic film.
That's good.
I saw it in IMAX. I was literally on the edge of my seat during parts of this film, Aljon. I leaned forward. I was sitting on the edge of the seat going, oh my, I was so into this movie. Look, 94% of people who saw this movie like it. It's got 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, 7.6 out of 10 on IMDb. This is just a great movie. The synopsis is Ethan Hunt and the IMF team race against time to find the entity, a rogue artificial intelligence that can destroy mankind. What a cast. You know, aside from Tom Cruise, you got Haley Atwell, you've got Hannah Waddington, you've got Simon Pegg, Ving Rhames, S.A. Morales is the villain, one of the villains.
Wow, really?
You know? Trey Mel Tillman, the list goes on, and it is an edge of your seat type of film. I encourage people, go see this on a big screen in a movie theater. If you could see this in IMAX, it is worth it. It is worth it. And speaking of which, I went to see this in IMAX with a friend of mine, and the tickets and some concession items cost us $110. Can you imagine? This is like going to Disneyland now, you know? I mean, just the 2 seats for the IMAX theater were like $65.
Yeah, I believe it.
Well,
and people say that Disney's not full of value. Think about that for a minute when you go to a theme park.
I know.
I mean,
I'm telling you.
All things considered.
But I was happy to spend the money because this is a fantastic summer action movie. You will not, but I sit there and I've watched the Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, the last one, number 7.
Yeah.
I watched that this past week in anticipation of seeing Mission Impossible, the Final Reckoning, which is the 8th installment. And the stunts that Tom Cruise does in each of these films sort of tops what he did in the previous film.
Hard to top. I mean,
it's becoming harder and harder to top. But when you see this movie, Aljon, it is shocking that he is doing some of the things he's doing. It's unbelievable because it is him. It is not CGI. It is not a stunt person. He is actually doing this. And it's insane. It's absolutely insane. And I would encourage everybody to go see this. I love this film. I look forward to seeing this film several more times because it's that good. Now, I did watch a film I was really looking forward to, Fountain of Youth on Apple Plus.
Okay.
Now, listen to this cast. You've got John Krasinski, Natalie Portman, Stanley Tucci, right? You got Isa Gonzalez, 2 estranged sibling partners on a global heist to find the mythological Fountain of Youth. They must use their knowledge of history to follow clues on an adventure that will change their lives and possibly lead to immortality. Directed by Guy Ritchie. Now, you put all of that together and you go, my gosh, this has to be a good movie. This was the worst film. This is 2 hours I'm never going to get back. This is 2 hours I wasted.
Unbelievable.
The script is awful. And it was just a terrible film. I mean, Nancy and I were looking at each other going, are you kidding me?
Oh, yeah.
Rotten Tomatoes gives this 37%.
Oh.
54% of people who saw this liked it. And it's a 5.8 out of 10 on IMDb.
Oh, yeah.
This is that people don't even bother. This is a horrible movie. I thought this was going to be another, Raiders of the Lost Ark or National Treasure type of film, right?
Yes.
And it could have been if it had a decent script. It's just an awful movie, so don't bother people. Two thumbs down on that one.
Oh, that is so sad, man, especially with, this awesome cast.
I know. It's just unbelievable. Now, over on HBO Max, I did watch Pee-wee as himself. It's a 2-part documentary. It has a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Wow.
Yeah. 8.6 out of 10 on IMDb. I got to tell you, I knew Paul Rubens.
Yes.
Who plays Pee-wee Herman. He and I served on the Cal Arts Alumni Association for a period of time. And he went to Cal Arts. He's a Cal Arts alum. this tells sort of the complete story of his life. And it's unvarnished. It talks about his arrest at the theater in Sarasota, Florida. It also talks about the second arrest, for the material, the kitschy photos and stuff. And it goes into great detail on all of that. And I got to tell you, I thought it was an honest portrayal of him. And he did about 40 hours of interviews for this. And he did it with the filmmaker, Tom Wolfe, who directed, or excuse me, Matt Wolfe, who directed it. Pee-wee Paul did not tell, he did not tell the filmmakers that he had been battling cancer, because, he died in July of 2023.
Yes.
From cancer.
Yes.
And so, he put this in the works, I guess, really as a sort of a final record for himself, he put it out, he put himself out there and told his side of all of this stuff. So I think it was a fairly honest documentary. It's very well done. It's very engaging. It's 2 parts. I highly recommend you watch this, especially if you're a fan of Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I can't wait to see this myself. I mean, I think recently someone had put one of Pee-wee's Big Adventures, one of Paul Rubin's bikes that he used in the film on auction. And someone sent it to me and he goes, I know you're going to dig this. And of course I said, well, yeah, I dig it. I sure as hell can't afford it. But I'm glad that this is an honest documentary done with his, with his consent and his interaction. So I'm looking forward to seeing it.
And the thing I'll say about him, because I knew him, is that I do think that he was a bit of a self-sabotager.
Yeah.
He sabotaged himself, and part of it was ego based. He was, and he talks about this in the film. He felt he didn't get the creative recognition for Pee-wee's Big Adventure after it released. Everybody was giving all the credit to Tim Burton.
Yeah.
And Paul didn't. Paul felt like it was Pee-wee and Tim, and Paul wasn't getting his due.
Right.
And I think that was part of his part of the problems he had throughout his career.
Yeah, see that.
So anyway, I highly recommend Pee-wee as himself on HBO Max. And then I continued to watch episodes of Your Friends and Neighbors on Apple TV, which continues to drop new episodes each week. It stars John Hamm. It's really a great series. I'm really enjoying it. Amanda Peet, Mark Tallman. It's a great series on Apple Plus. I really like it a lot, so I highly recommend it. Over on BritBox, which you can also see on Prime, Amazon Prime, there's a show called I, Jack Wright. When Jack Wright dies in what appears to be a suicide, Sally faces an earth-shattering revelation about her husband's will, and DCI Morgan makes a shocking discovery. This is a real terrific British mystery. Rotten Tomatoes gives it 100%, 7.1 out of 10 on IMDb. 77% of people who watch this like the show. I really enjoyed this. It's a great cast of British actors and actresses. So check that out. I, Jack Wright. And then finally, I finished watching The Studio with Seth Rogen. Catherine O'Hara, Bryan Cranston, Catherine Hahn, Seth Rogen, as I said, great ensemble cast here. and Rotten Tomatoes gives it 93%. IMDb 8.1 out of 10. 70% of people who watched this liked it. I got to tell you, if you have any interest in the entertainment industry, and if you're involved in the entertainment industry, you got to watch this series, because I'm laughing my tail off as I'm watching this, because each of the characters is like a composite of people you probably know if you work in the industry.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And it's hysterical. So the season, all episodes of season 1 are out there on Apple Plus. So check that out. That's what I've been watching. Aljon, what have you been watching?
Oh, Dave. Well, we're wrapping up Daredevil finally. Daredevil
right.
Born Again on Disney Plus. You know, I feel that this season has been very good, but you can tell the difference in quality of episodes throughout the season. You know, when I say I'm wrapping it up, I mean, gosh, Dave, I mean, what a crazy season it's been. I mean, this is kind of like the rebranding, rechristening of Disney, of a Marvel television. They did some of this during the pandemic and the shutdown, and then the rest of it they kind of reshot. And I think while it was a little uneven, I believe the key points were, this is a character we want to pay homage to, the character and the fans, and give them what they want. I think Vincent D'Onofrio is very compelling, and so is the rest of the cast. Charlie Cox is great. And I think just the two of them on their shoulders, and the great acting and the wonderful action sequences. And I don't know if you saw this season, Dave, but it's definitely good, and it leaves everybody wanting more. And I will also put in a big thumbs up for John Barenthal, who plays the Punisher. I think we all like John Barenthal a lot. I think he's just an amazing actor, and every time he's on the screen with Charlie Cox as Daredevil and the Punisher, I want more. I definitely want to see more.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. You know, I've only watched the first, I think, 3 episodes, so I still have to catch up on this one.
Yeah, Dave, it's a 60% of the episodes are amazing, absolutely amazing. The rest, not so much, but it's those moments that make it worth it. You know,
Yeah.
I will tell you, it's worth it, and it gives me the idea that now we're riding the ship. Kevin Feige has got they've canceled a lot of things recently, and they pushed back. And I'm not going to save this for the news section. I'm just going to say it right now. Marvel has pushed back the rest of their film slate to an additional 6 months. So, they thought they were going to hit the spring of next year, and they're not going to do it. They're moving it to the holiday season of next year and the following year for Infinity Wars. And they should, because it's not just focus on the quality, make it good. Don't rush things out there, and don't stress people out. Just give us quality stuff. And I'm glad they're taking that step, and they did it during this season. And I'm happy to say that it gives me more stuff to love about Marvel. So awesome on that. The other thing I've been kind of watching is Criminal Minds. As you know, it's a great procedural. It's on Paramount Plus, and they brought back a classic character in this, albeit in more of a cameo. But I will say that the acting from AJ Cook, who plays Agent Jennifer Giroux, was off the chain on this. And the whole cast, especially Joe Mantegna. If you love Joe Mantegna, he's a brilliant actor. He directs the final episode of the season. Well, at least this part that I've seen so far. They're releasing it weekly. This is a high point of the series, I believe, and I know there's several more episodes left. But I can't wait to see what happens next. Just an incredible cast, and I can't believe they've been doing it for like 20 years. And I went back into the vault because I was looking for stuff for the kiddos to watch. And we love the Cars stuff that they have on Disney Plus. And I went back, Dave, and saw Mater's Tall Tales. And these are the Mater Tall Tales were a bunch of shorts, of course, featuring Tow Mater from the Cars franchise of Disney Pixar films. And they're fun. They're really fun. And there's like maybe 8 of them. that are on there, and go back and check it out. Larry the Cable Guy is great. I'm just glad they're able to get a lot of these great actors back in the saddle, but definitely Larry the Cable Guy. The character's charming, the animation's great, for like little 8-minute shorts. But of course, you cruise into the crazy adventures of Tow Mater, and of course, since they're tall tales, he's telling you the truth. And embellishing, and the kids absolutely loved it, and I've never seen them before, so they're brand new to me, and they're great. So go back in and check it out for yourself. If you haven't seen it on Disney Plus, it's definitely worth a watch. Of course, this is from the prior administration of Pixar films, so but it's fun. It's irreverent and it's a lot of fun. So go back and read the car stuff. So anyway, gang, that's what we've been watching this week. Feel free to send us what you've been watching, and maybe we'll take a look at it and review it in a future episode.
Skull Rock Podcast. This week in Disney and pop culture.
Well, Dave, Lilo and Stitch targeting 170 million plus in the box office this week. Mission Impossible I series best at 77 million. Dave, I think the box office is going to be looking darn good this summer.
Well, something, I think so too. This is just really a positive for movie theaters, but it has to do with the fact that there's great content being put into the theaters.
Yeah.
As you heard me say, Mission Impossible is a great summer action movie. I encourage people to see it in the movie theater. I am going to go see Lilo and Stitch in the theaters probably this coming week, because I always thought Lilo and Stitch should have been a live action movie. I've said that before. So I'm actually looking forward to seeing this. It was great over the weekend when I went to see Mission Impossible. It was great just seeing the movie theater crowded.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
I bet it was crowded. And
yeah,
you know what I love? I caught some of the promotion for Mission Impossible and Tom Cruise in the movie theater with a bunch of movie theater workers, just setting out the popcorn and, all the different merchandise, and talking to the people working in the theater about how popular the movies are and how cool it is to still be involved in the industry and still be making movies that bring people to the theater. And that's what people really want. They want a reason to shell out, Dave, as you said, the $100 or however much it is to bring the family out to see these films. And I think that's the great thing too. There's something so palpable about seeing a film in a theater.
It's the communal experience.
That's right,
Aljon.
That's right.
It's not only the communal experience, but it's also the sound system, the size of the screen. When I saw Mission Impossible on the IMAX screen with that sound system they have in there, it's unbelievable. And there are sequences in that movie that I don't think you could appreciate unless you see it on a giant screen.
This is true. The arena sound is so impeccable. It's like watching Thunderbolts, right? You're watching that, and just everything about it is big and is next level. So it's
immersive.
Yeah.
It's an immersive communal experience, and I still enjoy that. I really do. And look, there are movies that get released where you go, I don't need to see that on a big screen. And I've told people that, over the years on this podcast, when I see something, I'll tell you honestly, you could just watch that when it comes out on a streamer. Yeah. But a movie like Mission Impossible, and also just Lilo and Stitch for that matter, because of what I've seen with the trailers, those are the kinds of movies you want to see on a big screen.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to see it myself. I can't wait to take the kids to see it. And what we love too, we even love going to the drive-in theater. It's that time of a year again where we get to go to the drive-in, one of my favorites. So check out Mission Impossible. It looks amazing. It's going to be setting box office records. And then it goes on in the Hollywood Reporter article to talk about Lilo and Stitch. It was tracking 120 million, and it has grown since this past Thursday to 165. It's coming in even higher, and Stitch isn't just drawing interest from families, but popping in to this film are young girls, younger women, Gen Z, and younger millennials who grew up on the movie and the resulting TV show about of course, the lion girl and the dog who is not a dog, who is an alien. And our kids love Lilo and Stitch. I just saw, just to prep them, Dave, we were watching Lilo and Stitch on Disney Plus. And
there you go.
The TV show, just getting them prepped, and we want to definitely go and see it. I mean, yes, people will say it's a rehash, it's a retread, whatever, but if it ain't broke, why fix it? It's like the whole Lion King situation, right?
Look, I'm going to say this again, and I've said it before on this show. When Disney does a live action remake, when they do it well, it's giving the audience a choice. It's giving them another genre, if you will, to see their favorite story. So it's not supplanting or taking away from the original animated property if it's done well. Okay, if it's done badly, of course it's damaging the IP. And an example of that is the Snow White live action movie.
Right.
The Snow White live action movie was a disaster. Okay. Lilo and Stitch, on the other hand, you still have the original animated film. You can watch it anytime on Disney Plus, right? Now you've got a live action version you can see in the theaters, and you'll be able to watch on Disney Plus at some point, right? And, to me, those are choices for the audience. And I think that's a good thing. And again, if it's done well, it works. Jon Favreau's remake of The Lion King was wonderful. He did a great job. His remake of The Jungle Book was fantastic. Did a great job, but some of the other ones that don't hit the mark because they're making changes, Tim Burton's Dumbo could have been very good, but you could see that studio executives meddled in that and pushed some changes that I didn't think helped that movie at all.
No,
it hurt it.
Most definitely.
And I loved Tim's version. I mean, I loved his vision of what he was wanting to do with Dumbo, but you could tell his hands were tied on certain aspects of that film.
And this is why Tim Burton is hot and cold with working with Disney.
Exactly.
I mean, we've documented it on this show time and time again with people, and you've done it yourself, when you were talking to Tim about your book for A Nightmare Before Christmas, and it's frustrating, but let's hope that Disney can lick its wounds, learn from its mistakes. Lilo and Stitch is targeting some great numbers, and great, because Lilo and Stitch is such a great. The animated movie, I think, gang, should deserve so much more flowers than it gets, because I love that movie. I love the style of it.
It's a beautiful film.
Yeah, and I cannot wait to see it in live action. I mean, Stitch, you're right, Dave. I mean, it just lends itself great to this, and I hope they don't mess with the formula. I'm looking forward to reviewing it myself.
Good.
Well, talking about something that does stick the landing, can you talk about, another huge franchise, Toy Story? Toy Story, to me, is literally like one of the biggest franchises in animation history. Toy Story 5, in fact, Conan O'Brien is a new character, and once again, probably one of the most beloved talk show hosts of all time, Conan O'Brien. I love Conan O'Brien, Dave, and I'm glad that he's part of this new franchise. I was hoping personally to see Toy Story just keep on going and going and going. I did not see a need to kind of. And if they were to end it on Toy Story 3, I would have been happy about that. But they did Toy Story 4, and it's good. But I hate to see the gang break up, man. So now here comes Toy Story 5. Dave, what do you think about this news?
Well, something, look, if they have a good script and a good director, and in this case, they do have a good director. Andrew Stanton is directing this along with somebody else, an up-and-coming person at Pixar. But, from my perspective, if you have a good script and you have a good director and you want to continue telling the stories, it's like Mission Impossible. They've got 8 installments, right? It keeps working and it keeps getting better. So, I think Toy Story 5, The premise is dealing with kids today, spending all their time playing video games, right? And so I think that's a great premise. Conan O'Brien's coming in as a new character called Smarty Pants.
I love it.
So it should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. They've got all the ingredients for a great film.
Oh, I love it, and I cannot wait. Netflix releases Fubar Season 2 with a dancing Arnold Schwarzenegger. Dave, you saw Fubar Season 1, and you said it was good, but mixed in your eyes.
Look, to me, it's a fun show. It's a bit contrived, but it's Arnold, and I enjoyed it. And sometimes I think Arnold doesn't take himself too seriously, which makes it all the more better. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And there's a good cast of actors in there around him, so it's an ensemble cast with him, and I did enjoy Season 1. Is it great? No, of course not, but it's fun. It's fun, it's enjoyable.
Well, it doesn't have like 30% on Rotten Tomatoes. At least it has that going for it. But Carrie-Anne Moss is new. They bring back Carrie-Anne Moss, and Carrie-Anne Moss fresh off the heels of the Star Wars, what was the Acolyte? Of course, a lot of people know Carrie-Anne Moss. And then the season also brings back Schwarzenegger's daughter on the show, Monica Barbero. So I'm looking forward to seeing this as well and catching up on Fubar. Now, something that you sent me, you knew I was going to enjoy it. Was
when I watched this trailer, Aljon, I said, well, this is right up Aljon's alley.
It really is.
And it scared the hell out of me.
And I'm looking forward to it myself, because nothing makes me smile ear to ear than killer clowns. Stephen King's It is returning in a show called Welcome to Derry, and Pennywise the Clown is back in HBO Max's return to Stephen King's cursed Maine town. Yes, I'm liking it. This is actually a prequel to the hit series It, which has, of course, adapted Stephen King's horror mess about the small town Derry in Maine, cursed by the presence of a shape-shifting killer clown, which returns to murder a slew of children every 27 years. And of course, it's great. I mean, Dave, did you happen to see It in the theater or any of the prior?
Something? I did see It. Okay.
Yeah.
And I did see It too.
Okay, there you go.
Right.
So it was
so I know what the premise is.
Okay.
Of the show. I actually went to see it because a buddy of mine who I go to see movies with, basically there was nothing else happening that particular weekend, so we just said, all right, I just said, okay, I'll go see it. I generally don't like those kinds of movies, but I did enjoy it. It's Stephen King.
It's Stephen King, and Stephen King writes about childhood fears.
Yes.
And how they kind of come to life, and how they really become threaded into who you become as an adult, and how some of these things can kind of rear their ugly heads. And in this case, I mean, it's very literal, with Pennywise the Clown terrorizing children in this small town, and coming back, and the children, of course, have to face their fears, which they do. So it'll be interesting to see how this prequel series treats the character and the mythology that it's built around. I'm sure there's going to be some care and attention to detail. Hopefully, we can all hope.
Yes.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Obituary roll call.
All right. This is sad because, growing up as a Gen Xer, I love the TV show Cheers. And I still love watching it to this day. George Wendt, the beer-loving Norm on Cheers, passes away at the age of 76. And there is no more beloved character in that TV show than George Wendt, who played the everyman. He had his stool, it was always the same place for 11 seasons of the sitcom that made must-see TV, Cheers. Norm Peterson, George Wendt, passed away peacefully in his sleep in Los Angeles. His family confirmed early Tuesday morning. A rep for Wendt said he died of natural causes. Dave, he's kind of like the fun-loving guy on the show,
He really was, an iconic TV sitcom character. Just people yelling out, Norm, or calling your name when you entered a room. Exactly. It was an homage to Norm.
Yes.
And he was terrific. He was part of that great cast of Cheers, and he'll certainly be missed. That's for sure. But that series is always on someplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's been in so many different movies as well, and TV shows, from Dreamscape, of course, a lot of them in the movies. Dreamscape from '84, House, Fletch, Gung Ho, Never Say Die, Forever Young, and Spice World in the '90s with the Spice Girls. Yes, he was in that one too. One of my favorite guilty pleasures, the Spice World movie. And so, yes, absolutely. So let's remember him, and and there was a nice touching tribute there at the Cheers bar in Boston, the actual Cheers bar.
Yeah, right.
And
yes.
They kept his mug of beer there and some flowers there by his bar stool. Just an awesome thing.
Yeah.
Also, Scream Queen from It came from outer space. Dies at 96. Kathleen Hughes, and a lot of people remember this. I mean, I think It Came from Outer Space is one of the classics. She also appeared in The Glass Web, For Men Only, Bad Sisters, and The Golden Blade. She was a statuesque starlet in 1950 who starred in Unleashed a Terrifying Scream in connection with her role in the 3D sci-fi classic It Came from Outer Space. She died on Monday. What a career for her.
Yeah, she had a terrific career, and really is sort of the poster child for all of those sci-fi horror movies of the 50s. She gives that classic scream.
Absolutely. This just in, Dave, I'm going to squeeze this one in. Les Dilly, Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark art director, dies at 80. This just came in. Oscar-winning production designer died May 20th from complications due to Alzheimer's. Les Dilly, the Oscar-winning art director and production designer, had passed away. Of course, the legacy lives on. Of course, one of the biggest credits he had to his over 100 plus films that he's been accredited to is Raiders of the Lost Ark, and of course Star Wars: A New Hope. So he's worked with directors like George Lucas, James Cameron, Steven Spielberg, Ridley Scott, Irvin Kershner, John Landis, Mimi Leader. I mean, wow, this guy he's done it all. He was honored with a BAFTA award for his contributions to British cinema, so he's a legend. So, man, rest in peace. Wow, what a body of work this guy. So, an art director, I mean, come on. Those kind of films, especially working with, people like Landis, Spielberg, and Lucas, that's just amazing. What a body of work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mara Corday, star of Tarantula and lots of Westerns, dies at 95. Also, what a long career. She appeared alongside Clint Eastwood in several films, most notably as a hostage in Go Ahead, Make My Day, and in the scene in Sudden Impact. So, wow. And that was an amazing movie as well with Clint Eastwood and Dirty Harry franchise. So, David,
go ahead, punk. Make my day.
Absolutely. She was a contract player at Universal, and she did a bunch of Westerns back in the 50s, the mid to late 50s. Drums Across the River, Man Without a Star, starring Kirk Douglas, and The Quiet Gun, starring Forrest Tucker. And later on, she was in a bunch of films in the 70s, 77 Sunset Strip, The Big Valley, and Nanny and the Professor, and in the Jack Arnold directed Tarantula in 1955. And I think a lot of people will remember those kind of 3D 50s and 60s movies. So with the big,
absolutely. And you know something, movies. This year is the 70th anniversary of Tarantula.
Absolutely. And I remember Tarantula myself because I was thinking to myself, man, there's nothing worse than I hate spiders like that. I absolutely hate spiders. So, well, goodness, rest in peace. Before we move on to our big interview, I have to also bring this up, and this isn't in the obituary roll call, but it is worth mentioning because of our music and pop culture segment. But did you see this? Billy Joel shares brain disorder diagnosis. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did see that, but you know something? It's complete. He's going to recover. It's completely curable. Sometimes what he has, and I can't even pronounce it. It goes misdiagnosed sometimes. and is often confused with dementia or Alzheimer's. But he has something that is completely curable. He's going to be treated for it, and he'll more than likely be back on the touring circuit.
It is called normal pressure hydrocephalus. NPH.
Hydrocephalus.
Hydrocephalus.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like the spinal fluid going into the brain.
Yeah.
And they do surgery, and he has to do some physical therapy. It's affected his hearing, his vision, and his balance. And they actually showed a clip of him on stage throwing his mic stand and then falling backwards because he lost his balance.
Yeah.
So, but I saw a whole report on it. It's completely curable, and I'm glad he's getting it taken care of.
Absolutely, man. I'm looking forward to seeing him live. That's one of my bucket list concerts, Dave, to see Billy Joel. I know you've seen him before.
And you know something? He just finished his 100th show with Madison Square Garden, the residency he did at Madison Square Garden. He did shows every year, and he did 100 concerts there.
I'd love to see him at some point. That is one of my bucket list items. So get well soon, Billy Joel.
Yeah.
And now let's sit back and relax. This is our main event. Jim Hillin, Part 2, visual effects and artist animator. We're back right here on Skull Rock Podcast.
Let's do it.
Skull Rock Podcast. Interview time.
Well, Aljon, we are back with week 2 with Jim Hillin here on the Skull Rock Podcast. Jim, visual effects supervisor. I was on the edge of my seat last week while you were talking about the ballroom sequence in Beauty and the Beast and getting the final approval from Jeffrey Katzenberg. I want to kind of pick up from there and sort of finish off what the rest of the production was like for you on Beauty and the Beast, and then the accolades that followed.
Well, I mean, we did a few other things besides the ballroom. I mean, every cart, I think, in the film was done in 3D, and there were a surprising number of carts. And there were, let's see what else. Scott Johnson wrote a particle system to do rain during the fight sequence on top of the castle at the end of the film. Mm-hmm. And so that was put into the film, and it was a real success, I think, to make it look like it was raining in all of those shots. And they used that and processing and all kinds of stuff to make it look really cool. Gosh, we were just wrapping up all kinds of things left and right, to get stuff to work. I got to do some animation. Oh my goodness, I had to do a drawn piece of paper sitting on a CG book next to the fountain, and I forget the name of the song. It's I guess it starts with Little Town, right? Yeah. And Belle ends up sitting at a fountain with a sheep watching her read a book, and she's talking about the story of the prince, and she's not going to, the girl isn't going to know until chapter 3, that thing. Well, there was a close-up of the book, and there's a painted picture that goes into the book that had to be tracked to the book by hand. And wow. that was me for probably about 2 weeks.
So it's an it was a 2D animated book, but the image in the book was a CG element that you had to track to that animation.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, that was we did not have the tools, shall we say, to do that work.
So you really had to eyeball it and do it by hand.
Well, and to the point of the limit of the numbers. At one point I had to put in numbers that were so tiny to get it to move to appropriately to the next frame that they were too small to be viewed. Anyway, I'd have to put in a number like 0.0003 to make one go a little further, right?
Got it.
But when I looked at the number after putting it in, it would only say 1. It would say 1.0, it didn't have the rest.
Right.
And I had to remember what I put in and write them down and all. It was just like, wow, crazy to get it to actually work. I remember Kirk at one point says, is this the best you can do? And I said, it's the best I can do up till today. Yeah. And you want me to go for another couple of days or, so he would see the progress over time, but it was tough.
But you eventually got there.
Yeah. I got there enough to make it work.
Yeah. So that it worked.
Yeah.
Wow. So tell me about completing the project and again, all of look, it was the first animated feature to get nominated in the Best Picture category.
Yeah, that
Right?
was great.
It was the first picture to break $100 million at the box office.
Yeah,
You
that
know,
was
and
also.
there was a tremendous amount of buzz about the ballroom sequence.
Well, I remember, I think Jeffrey did an amazing job with that, and it was because of a film festival where they were going to show a work in progress version of Beauty and the Beast because the film wasn't finished.
Right.
And so the certain scenes still had, they weren't in color.
Yeah. They were-
You would see, tests that were part of the thing, part of editorial. I mean, but they put that together in such a way that it told the story beautifully, and I think people were just completely flipped out over all the technology that went into getting something like that done. And I think that's where a lot of it came from. They had a greater appreciation for what people did in creating animated films.
And did you go to like SIGGRAPH the following year to do a presentation at all? Were there requests for that kind of stuff at some of the festivals?
I'm sure there were, but I wasn't with the company anymore.
Oh, what happened?
Let's see, I went into a room where I was asked to work on a film about a couple of lions that were brothers. It was going to be set in Africa. And they, everybody loved the work I'd done on Beauty and the Beast. And it was Tom Schumacher and George Scribner, I'm pretty sure they were in the room.
Yeah, George was the development director on The Lion King. Yeah.
Right. And so they both asked me, so you want to work on our film? And I said, well, there's this thing that happened when I first came here that made things very awkward for a long time with me and my crew. And I told them that story.
Yeah.
And I said, so as much as I would, love to go on to head up another film, I'm thinking that wouldn't it be nice if there was someone else from the department who could be put in charge? I mean, I would still be here if you needed me to talk about or help them out or give them insight or whatever. But I think it would just benefit the department if it could be somebody else. And they were like, and Tom was just looked at me, just didn't know what to say, and said, no one's told us anything about this. I said, well, who else would tell you besides me?
Yeah, yeah.
And anyway, so they didn't offer me the gig.
Okay.
And they didn't offer me, and there was no other gig to be had at the time. So that was it.
Wow.
Yeah. So let's see, who was it? Dan Phillips was in charge of the department, the manager of the department, and he tried everything in his bag of tricks to get me assigned to something else. I worked on Encino Man. I worked on all kinds of films around the lot, trying to, I was basically consulting on several other films and other projects over at Imagineering and this kind of a thing. But there was nothing that really stuck at that moment. Yeah. And so I think by Christmas, I was pretty much out the door.
And where did you go?
I got hired by Metrolight Studios.
Okay.
Which was a company down on, I think it was like 3rd and La Brea.
And what were they doing?
Well, Metrolight was a couple of companies had gone under. Robert Abel.
Yep.
Was one of the companies that had gone under. And there's another company in Ohio, which I can't.
Robert Abel was one of the early CG Abel and Associates.
Oh yeah,
he was one of the early CG houses.
Absolutely. No, they were into commercials and doing films, and I remember they did some of the early tests for the first Star Trek film and all that kind of stuff. But that's where that company came from, to a company in Ohio and the Robert Abel company, and people from them both combined to start Metrolight Studios. The guy who had been running the company in Ohio was moving to LA, and we started out in the same space that the Robert Abel company had been in.
Okay. In
the same building. And then finally moved to this place over on 3rd and La Brea. And we took the fourth floor. And at the time we were, Metrolight had been asked to do an animated film about how to make beer down at because Anheuser-Busch, most people didn't know, owned a theme park down in San Diego, which was, SeaWorld. So Anheuser-Busch was the owner of the company, and they were going to have a pavilion about, I guess they had a pavilion already about Anheuser-Busch and the history of it and blah, blah, blah. And so they were going to make a film in this pavilion that was going to be about, Mr. Barley talks about how to make beer, this kind of thing. And it was all going to be CGI, and we did a bunch of tests on it. It was looking pretty good and all that kind of stuff. And we were I was there maybe 4 or 5 months working on that project, and then Joe the Camel sort of hit the fan with, basically, I guess there were a lot of Joe the Camel was an animated character that looked like it was appealing to children. And of course, he was being used to sell cigarettes, Camel cigarettes. And so that came out and hit the news pretty hard. And there was a lot of people, yelling to get rid of Joe the Camel. And suddenly Anheuser-Busch said, hey, maybe it's not such a good idea to do a film about it, Mr. Barley making beer. So they shut the project down. And I think I moved on to another theme park ride that was going to be for the Korean Expo, the World Expo, that was coming up in a couple of years after that.
And I mean, it sounds to me like you were leading almost the life of somebody in the live action world, where it was more project driven and transient.
Yes, exactly. And that's mostly how my career has been.
Yeah. And
42 years.
But that's mostly, the live action world. And I think now it's probably starting to become the animation world as well. Feature animation. I think people are becoming more transient. But so what happened next?
Oh gosh, what happened next? Let's see. I think I remember. So I was like all Hollywood people. I'm reading Variety and I'm reading Hollywood Reporter and seeing what's going on with the various visual effects films that are being greenlit and planned, and directors that are talking about the next thing they want to work on and all that kind of stuff. And I see an announcement in the Hollywood Reporter about these three guys, Jim Cameron, Stan Winston, and Scott Ross, who are going to start a new visual effects company in Los Angeles. And they had announced that they were all going to be working together to start this new company. And it was a big splash in the trades. And the day they announced that, I knew where Cameron's office was in Santa Monica. So I found out what the phone number was, and I called up and I talked to the lady on the phone, the operator, whoever she was, receptionist. And I said, what's your fax number there? I got to send something over to Jim. And so she gave me the fax number, and I said, thank you very much. And I faxed my resume from Metrolight's fax machine to Jim Cameron's company that day. And I just sort of, that would go into the ether and see what happens. And somewhere about 3 or 4 o'clock that day, it comes over the loudspeaker at work at Metrolight, says, what was it? Jim Hillin, Steven Spielberg on line 2. And I was just like, what? And I get up, and of course, everyone's heard this. I'm walking through all of the tables. Everybody's looking at me like, what? And I go pick up the phone, and I said, hello? I said, Jim, this is Scott Ross. How you doing? Introduction to Scott Ross, pretending to be Steven Spielberg. Anyway, so he said, I got your resume right here. I'm looking at it. How soon can you be over here? And I said, well, I just have to get out of work. I think I should probably be able to be there in about an hour. Was that okay? And he said, sure, I'll see you in an hour. And so I left work a little early and got in the car, drove over to Cameron's offices in Santa Monica, took the elevator up, told him who I was. They got Scott. He comes out, says, he's got my resume in his hand, and he comes in, and we go past Jim's office into the conference room, and I'm sitting at the head of the table, and he's sitting to my right, and we're talking about stuff. I don't know. I don't remember anything. I'm so freaked out anyway by what I'm doing that I don't even notice the other guy who comes into the room. I see someone walk by. I don't know who it is. And I'm talking to him, and he said, well, maybe Jim has some questions. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he, of course, points down the table, and Jim Cameron's sitting at the other end of the table, looking at my resume. And so I talk with him for a little bit and talk with Scott some more, and they say, well, we'd like to have you. We're going to be getting started up here at Stan's next week. So if you're available, we'd like to have you.
Was this the beginning of Lightstorm?
Digital Domain.
Oh, Digital Domain. That's
Lightstorm
okay.
is where I had the meeting.
Okay, got it. Lightstorm was his production company.
Yes, in Santa Monica. Yeah.
Digital Domain was the beginnings of Digital Domain as a visual effects house.
Right. So that's what they were asking me to do. And I didn't know, no one knew what the name of it was. They hadn't named it yet. So I ended up being employee number 7.
Wow.
Yeah. After Jim and Stan and Scott and their assistants, and
Yeah,
then
sure.
yeah.
So tell us about Digital Domain.
Boy, what a rush.
Yeah, and they had a real tumultuous existence, didn't they?
I think so, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we were, well, let's see. We moved into a space in Venice off Rose Avenue, which had been Chiat Day,
The advertising
big
company.
advertising company,
Yeah.
right? And this was, let me think. This must have been either late 1992 or early 1993. I think it was 93. And we they were looking around for a place to be. We started out at Stan's office up in Van Nuys, and they had a computer room. I guess he'd been trying to take his his creature company. He'd been trying to take it to go digital for a while,
Yeah.
because I think all the creature guys around town realized that they could make an expression on a puppet go from like A to B, and if they really pushed it, they might have got a C out of it, but they couldn't do more than that. And they
Right.
realized that, but computers could do much more.
Well, and
Spaces.
wasn't this around the time of Jurassic Park, the first Jurassic Park? Because
Yeah, the first Jurassic Park had just come out the previous year.
Yeah, and I think was it Stan Winston that was originally going to do the sort of creatures, the puppets.
Yeah, he did the raptors, full size raptors in the kitchen.
Right.
The ones that came up to the door, but not and the ones that pushed the door open, but not the ones who came in.
Right.
The ones that came in were CG.
But yeah, that's what I was going to say though, because they originally were looking at doing the dinosaurs as stop motion, and
right.
ultimately switched to computer because the technology was just about there for it. Right.
Yeah. Steve Williams up at Industrial Light and Magic had done a test of the T-Rex early on of it walking past a tree.
Yeah.
And that convinced the director Spielberg to go that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
That test.
So he was so Stan Winston was trying to reinvent himself, and
yes,
obviously saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, they still, there was still a place for the work, the kind of work that he did anyway.
Yeah.
But he knew that in the future that a large part of his work would be taken away by the computer.
Yeah.
So yeah, he had 9 workstations at Stan's, and they were already trying to figure out how to do things and use the software.
Yeah.
But we came in as this new company, and we opened up a place. I think it was June of that year. We moved into the old Chiat Day building on Rose Avenue in Venice.
And what was the first?
We had, I think it was $20 million is what the company had to get the company off the ground and started.
Yeah. And how quick did you burn through that?
Pretty quick. But we knew we could last with the $20 million. We could hire 27 people, and they were going to be our crew. And so we had to get really good people who were really good at doing a lot of things. And we hired all of them, and we had projects waiting for us. In fact, we had turned down several projects because we didn't have the doors open yet.
Yeah.
And but it had been announced we were starting the company, and they'd given it a name now, and so that was in the zeitgeist and was building a lot of steam to get off the ground. So, but we had True Lies waiting for us, and we had Interview with the Vampire, which came out of opening the studio. I mean, that was probably the first thing that we got as a studio had never done anything, and we were getting really nice projects off at the very start.
And what was the atmosphere like there? Was it chaotic? Was it you felt like you were starting something new? Was it overwhelming?
I just remember it was every day was a different challenge, and every day it was exciting. And the people who were working there at the beginning could work together with almost anybody, and they were very, very, very experienced. The people we hired, they'd done a lot of stuff, and it was a discovery every day, finding out the new things that you didn't know that this guy Mark could do, or this person Jesse could do, or it was always something new that was just like, well, you can do that too? Wow, okay, let's go try this then. And then it was a matter of everyone had worked at companies where there was a pipeline to get things done. And so everyone had a different take on, how things should be done and all this kind of stuff. And we'd been trying to reinvent ourselves at Metrolite. And so I'd already gone through a big upheaval of talking to people about what made work bad and what made work good, this kind of thing.
And what did you come up with?
Well, we came up with some ways that worked for starting the company. And it was sort of like a set of rules on how you get things done and get things bid and all this kind of stuff, and just started getting people online to understand how it was going to go.
Yeah. And was that period sort of a period, I think it was a heyday of visual effects, right? Like the studios were throwing money at it.
It could be. I remember, we started out with a very small crew, 27 people.
Yeah.
But by the time I got to working for Sony Pictures in the early 2000s, I stepped into that place and it was a building of 600 people.
Yeah. Wow.
It was a ton of projects and just a lot to be done, sometimes in a very short amount of time.
Sure.
So it was, things had changed quite a bit. I remember there was a time, probably about 1995, 1996, somewhere around there, where it was seemed like every company in the world that wanted to be involved with visual effects was trying to hire 300 to 600 people.
Yeah.
Well, there just weren't that many people in the world to be hired.
Right.
Because before that, maybe there was a couple of thousand people in North America that did visual effects with digital stuff, and they all had jobs.
So did you guys feel like there was a squeeze for talent?
We knew we had to look in places we wouldn't necessarily normally look. I mean, I'd worked in broadcast at the Post Group down in Hollywood for a while. And so, but there were places that had been doing digital stuff longer than people doing visual effects. The guys that were doing like the visual effects for the TV shows back in 1980s, 1990s, stuff like that. Yeah. There were people there that you could find that had similar work ethic and similar skills, but they'd never worked on a film before.
Right.
So we were looking at post-production people from New York and other, Chicago, and interviewing all kinds of people, trying to see what we could find.
How long were you at Digital Domain for?
I was at Digital Domain from 93 to, I think I went back to Disney. And I think it's either end of 95 or early 96, something like that.
To do Dinosaur.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But so you were there at Digital Domain during the building years when the company was really growing, right?
Yeah. I mean, with the first projects we were doing, Strange Days, Titanic, Apollo 13, Interview with the Vampire, True Lies. Those were all stellar films.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
One after another,
Yeah. So and why did you leave?
I left, I think, mostly for political reasons. I'm not really a political person. There were things I was doing to try to protect my crew from certain people. And I think they were sort of really going over the board with their demands of what certain people would do. And I got in the way and said, no, you can't do that. And said, well, how are we going to do it? I said, I'll do it. And so I would just volunteer my time to take over what someone else was going to probably quit the company if they were asked to do it. So I said, this is a really talented guy. You don't want this guy to quit the company.
Yeah, and those places were notorious pressure cookers because you were under the gun to get shots done, and people were working 14, 16-hour days, right?
Well, some people did, particularly people that we tried to rotate. One of the things we wanted to do at the company was to rotate people that were, someone, if they'd worked on a film, maybe they'd work on a commercial for a while, maybe they'd go work on a theme park thing for a while, maybe they'd work on a game, So the company wanted to spread it out so that people didn't have to do the same thing day after day after day after day ad infinitum. So they could sort of shift from, I finished a movie, now maybe I'll go do a couple of commercials, then I'll go back to do another movie, or I'll do a TV show or something.
Yeah.
They wanted it to be spread out. And I think there were certain things like TV and commercials and things like that where, some of those people were getting hammered constantly.
Right.
If you stayed in there and did commercial, I think it would just be a lot.
Yeah, and those commercial schedules are insane. Those were 8 or 10 week schedules to get some of those commercials done, and it was almost like you're working around the clock.
Yeah, for some of them, certainly.
Yeah. So you left Digital Domain.
Yeah.
And again, you may not want to comment on it, but Digital Domain, after that sort of heyday period, they got into all kinds of problems. They overextended and financial issues and things like that, and eventually disappeared.
Michael Bay and
Did Cameron and Ross sell it off?
Ross, I think, still was working there until the second group came in.
Okay.
And Cameron left after Titanic and went on to do Avatar.
Right.
And I know we talked with him since, I mean, I had a version of Avatar that he had written out in like a novel form that was like 220 pages long.
Yeah.
That I read through early on with Digital Domain, and that was reading through that. I was just like, oh my god, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But he did a good job of it when finally there was the ability to do that job.
Yeah, yeah. But you left Digital Domain and you went back to Disney to work on Dinosaur.
Yep. Well, I got a call from one of my old engineers from the CG department, which was Edward Coomer.
Oh yeah, I remember Ed.
Yeah, so Ed gave me a call and he said, "Hey, we have a project over here at Disney we think you might be perfect for." And I said, and then it was like the best week to call me because I just had a couple of arguments with people who were producers above me.
Yeah.
Over personnel and all this kind of stuff. And it just happened to hit me at the right moment. And I was suddenly like, oh, you mean there's an escape hatch in that wall next to me? Oh. So, yeah, I went over there and saw a Dinosaur with a room. I remember it was a room full of storyboards that went in and walked me through. And I was just like, there were certain parts I was just like, okay, I can't look at that one for a while. Yeah, that's freaking me out. So let's keep looking at other stuff. But this one's going to wait. So fortunately, that got cut from the film. So
now I remember because the Dinosaur crew was in the North Side building, which was the old Lockheed Skunk Works building that they had renovated. And I was on Fantasia 2000 at that point, and it was in that facility as well. So I remember seeing a lot of you guys around in that building.
Yeah.
That film was interesting because they went and shot a tremendous amount of live action plates. Were you involved with that part of it?
No, not at all. There was so much to be done with the studio to get it up and running and to get the tools in place that we needed to be able to make the film. Some of which we were inventing out of, the ether as we went forward. So,
right.
Yeah. Well, we need something that does this. Well, that doesn't exist. How do we make that? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, yeah. And there was a whole separate crew that was going all over the world shooting plates.
A couple of crews, actually. There was an A crew and a B crew that were shooting plates.
Okay.
The A crew was the big crew that was mostly in like North America and like the desert and all that kind of stuff, shooting plates. And then there was another crew that was just the small crew that was like flying all over the world, South America and Hawaii and all kinds of places.
Yeah. And what exactly were you brought on to do on that project?
Well, let's see. I did a test for Michael Eisner. That's what we were doing when I first got there. We had a crew, I don't know, 20 people, something like that, to do a test, like a 3 or 4 minute test. I can't remember what it was. It was rather short, but we were going to create miniature live action backgrounds, like models of palm trees and this kind of thing, and then see if we could make the film that way rather than shoot live action plates. So the original idea was we'd make sets and shoot the sets and then add the characters in CG to the sets. So we did that. That was the first year of work, and we got a test done with an iguanodon that sort of looked like what Alidar would look like eventually, and one lemur. And they were doing a bit together in a scene, and
I don't ever remember seeing that test.
Yeah, I don't know if it still exists. I'm sure it's in the morgue.
I'm sure it's someplace.
Yeah. But I don't know if that's been attached as something to look on as an extra sometime to the film or something. But anyway.
How did it look?
I thought it looked pretty amazing. I mean, Tom Enriquez was sort of the guy who was making sure the sets looked like what he wanted it to look like in camera. So he would go around and throw dust and dirt and pebbles and mud and water all over the place to make it look like what he thought it should look like. And it looked pretty great in camera.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I had no idea that they were looking at doing, model sets.
Yeah, I think it came down to at one point. I mean, there was a building in the valley where they were thinking about actually using. I mean, it was pretty outrageous. It was sort of the idea of what they'd done with Nightmare Before Christmas, right?
Yeah.
Where they had a building where they could do all the shooting and go in and shoot all the backgrounds and all that kind of stuff using actual light, and get it to refract and reflect into the building, sunlight, shoot during the day. We have sets that could actually roll outside, and we could shoot outside if it meant to be a sunny day and all that kind of stuff. And then the expense of building that building is what said, no, we're not doing that. But it was pretty amazing looking at what they were thinking about doing. And I was kind of like, well, this is cool. I haven't seen that anywhere before, so that'd be fun to do. But we didn't do that. And so then it was the next thing was like, okay, we're going to shoot live action backgrounds, and that's going to be our movie.
So I want to step back for a second, because did Disney buy DreamQuest, the effects house, to do Dinosaur?
No, they were doing a film.
Was it
Well,
Gemini?
it was like a King Kong style film, but it was called Big Joe something or another. That was a Michael Eisner film that he
Okay.
brought. Yeah, I guess it was a Big Joe, whatever it was called, was a film about
Oh, was it Mighty Joe Young?
Mighty Joe Young. That's it, right?
Mighty Joe Young, yeah.
Mighty Joe Young. And that was a remake of something that had been made in the 30s, I think.
Right.
And he was bringing it forward with the technology of CG to be able to make it look much more realistic. And so they made Mighty Joe Young, and that's what they got acquired by Disney to finish that film.
Okay.
And then it was like, well, we have these guys, and we have these guys that are making the Dinosaur film. Can't we, do something to mush them together or something? And so there were some people brought in to try to see how that was going to work. But that was going to be after Mighty Joe Young and Dinosaur were finished.
Right. And they called that the Secret Lab.
Called it the Secret Lab, yeah. And I think they got a little tag on Dinosaur as being involved with that somehow. So,
yeah. So what were the next steps that you had to go through on Dinosaur?
Well, after that, then it was like, okay, so where are we going to be doing this work? And so we have to start putting a crew together, and we have to find those people. And so it was all during that time, right? 1996, we were trying to figure out where we're going to get our crew from.
Yeah.
And we're basically touring the world trying to hire people. And we went all over the place doing speeches to big auditoriums full of people. And then we would have interviews with whomever was interested with them after that. And we found people from all over the place.
Yeah. Were you going mostly around the U.S., or was it over in Europe as well?
Well, I think we were doing both. And I frankly don't remember if I ever went to Europe for them or not. I went to a bunch of other places, and certainly in North America, Canada, and other places, the Ringling School, and a couple of other big animation schools we went to and did presentations on.
That was the thing to do. There was such a shortage of talent during that time period, and
right.
you had
well, we were looking for existing CG talent. We were also looking for animators that could deal with doing this kind of CG work.
Yeah,
and there certainly weren't enough. There weren't enough great CG animators out there that you could pull from. And so it's like, well, how are we going to find these people? And then someone got the clever idea, says, well, hey, what was it called with the big orange? Another film, the crew that had done
James and the Giant Peach.
James and the Giant Peach, that's it. Sorry, the big orange. Yeah, there we go. There's my. Anyway, so yeah, we James and the Giant Peach was finishing up, and there wasn't another film for that group of animators to go on to.
And they were stop motion animators, but they knew motion.
Yes,
they could animate.
Right, and I'd been working with Eric, one of the directors of the film, but he was head of animation when I started working on Dinosaur. And Eric knew all those guys.
Right.
And had worked on, he did Sally and Oogie Boogie and a bunch of other characters on the Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah, Eric Layton, animation supervisor on that, and also a past guest here on the Skull Rock podcast.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So I was in the office next door to him.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we were talking all the time about stuff, and he was trying to get me more familiar with where he'd come from and how that worked. And I was trying to understand what he was doing and why Softimage was the set of tools that he thought we could do the film with, and all that kind of stuff. So it was just a matter of, a lot of conversations and demonstrations, and we were going back and forth showing each other stuff.
And talk about that for a second. I'd like our listeners to understand what software were you using on Dinosaur, because it wasn't Maya, was it?
Well, we did use Maya, and we used Softimage, and we used
Houdini, right?
And we used Houdini.
Yes. I actually brought Houdini into the company.
That was for
the Firebird sequence,
right?
And I was told
I 2000, right?
I was told I couldn't use it, and I said, "Well, can I get some evaluation copies?" And then I hired Michael Kaschak, who knew the software, and then we did a test on the Spring Sprite character for Firebird, and showed it to Paul and Gaetan, the directors. They loved it, and then there was no question. We had to get the software licenses to use.
Yeah, because we were trying to get our film off the ground, and I wanted to use Houdini to do like a lot of the effects.
Yeah,
and they said, well, the engineers aren't going to support that for Disney. They've already said no, and I'm like, what?
There was a period there where some of the folks in charge of technology wanted to have one software package, and that was going to be Maya, but the particle module in Maya was not as robust.
Not even close.
For effects at that point, the way Houdini was. That was a pretty funny period.
And I was also in charge of visual effects animation for the film.
Yeah. So that because Dinosaur was going on. Dinosaur was going on the same time I was working on Fantasia 2000 in the building, and that's how I got Houdini in on our project. Was
very sneaky of you. But
yes, it was. But it was what. I always say to people, 50 years from now, nobody's ever going to remember those stories. What they're going to remember is what's up on the screen.
Yeah, totally.
And we couldn't have done what we did in the Firebird sequence.
It was absolutely the right tool for what you needed.
Yeah, we had to use it, but they couldn't see it. But it was a matter of, you have to turn a no into a yes. And when the directors loved the test we did with Houdini, it was, the guys had to just gnash their teeth and wring their hands and go, fine, we'll get some software licenses.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I ended up being in charge of trying to do the same thing using Maya, and I got some really great guys in that department to come in and do the work, and it really worked out. So
yeah. I think this is a really great place for us to stop, and we'll pick it up again next week because I want to continue. It's a fascinating conversation because you were at so many different shops in town during I think a pivotal period of sort of the beginnings of digital effects and the evolution of it all. So I want to continue our conversation next week, if that's okay with you, Jim.
Oh, that sounds great.
It's really great having you on the Skull Rock podcast, and we will talk to you next week, continue our conversation. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Dave.
Hi, this is producer Carolyn Bates, and you're listening to the Skull Rock podcast.
Skull Rock Podcast.
To infinity and beyond.
Exploring the outer reaches of the Disney galaxy.
Oh, wow, you flew magnificently.
All right, Dave. Part 2 with Jim Hillin. How about that? And I can't believe it. We're, once again, just scratching the surface. I think he'll be back for part 3.
Yeah, no, we absolutely have a couple more parts with Jim, and I'm looking forward to that. And we will have part 3 next week. He's just a terrific guy, and what I love about him is that he's worked all around the industry. And he's kind of crossed back and forth between live action and animation, and he's really had a great career and some great stories behind the scenes, especially in the development of digital technology in the industry.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I can't believe all the blockbusters he's done. Definitely looking forward to peeling back more of the onion in the career and the life of Jim Hillin and all his contributions. So looking forward to that next week on the program. Ooh, hey, Dave, would you like that reggae horn again?
That was awesome.
That was
like
pretty
that.
awesome, man. I mean, it's not every day we get to do the reggae horn, but let's do this instead, shall we? All right. Well, gang, that wraps up yet another edition of Skull Rock Podcast. Thank you so much for listening till the very end. Don't forget, subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform, including YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, Instagram, great places to find us. Our entire archive of programs and interviews you can find at skullrockpodcast.com. Man, we have tons of episodes there for you to listen to and devour. Also, email us if you will. I'd appreciate it. We'd love to hear what you have to say in your comments. Dave or Aljon at skullrockpodcast.com. Don't forget, you can follow me also on Instagram at AljonGo, and you can also check out my other podcast, Dining at Disney, where we talk about food in the Disney parks every single week. And a shout out to Source Radio at srsounds.com for broadcasting and help promoting the show. Dave?
Well, as always, you can listen to me on SiriusXM Disney Hits, channel 133, my Tunes Behind the Tunes show. May, we're spotlighting If I Ever Knew You, from the 1995 Disney hit Pocahontas, which this year is celebrating its 30th anniversary. You can get signed copies of many of my books at theoldmillpress.com, including my latest book, Find Your Happy Place, the 8-Step Guide to Boosting Your Creativity Through a Personal Retreat, winner of a gold medal at the Fire Book Awards. And you can always check out my website, davidbossert.com. There's plenty of free content there to read and free stuff that you can send away for. And with that, Aljon, I'm going to say go out and have a fantastic short week. Right? I mean, if you're working, it's just Tuesday through Friday because of the holiday shortened week.
Yes.
Go out, have a fantastic week, everybody. Be kind to one another, and we'll see you back here next Monday, right here on the Skull Rock Podcast.
Oh, gang, it's time for a weekly dose of the Disney travel deal. Kristen, of course, our intrepid traveler and vacation planner, has got a deal for you. Kristen, what's on tap for this week?
Well, right now, if you are planning for 2026 and you have children that are ages 3 to 9, you can have, for your kiddos, free dining plan. That's right. In 2026, when you book a Walt Disney World Travel Company package for you and your kids, which means you have your hotel, as well as adding the dining plan for the guests that are 10 and up, then you will automatically, for those that are 3 to 9, have the dining plan for free for them.
It's amazing. I love that. And who doesn't love free dining? I mean, what a savings. What an absolute savings. So, Kristen, if people want to take advantage of this particular deal and get the free dining plan for their kiddos, or if you just want to go on any cruise line, including, of course, Disney Cruise Line or Adventures by Disney, Royal Caribbean, Carnival, what have you, or
MSC.
even MSC River Cruises, what have you, because people are now, after all this time, they're starting to book their trips with you. After all this time, and I'm so happy. Where can they email you?
They can contact me at Kristen, Kristen, at magicaljourneystravel.com.